about how a person can change, and they can become, from a very dry, logical, rational person to someone who's just floating in ecstasy. And as the story unfolds in future chapters, we'll see how Sarvabhauma, he became very joyful, and people even joked about Sarvabhauma that, once you were so formal and dry, and now you've become ecstatic, and everyone would laugh. Because of course Sarvabhauma was the senior scholar, he was the senior theologian of Puri. A little bit like in Oxford, when Shaunaka Rishi first went up to Oxford, he wanted to start the Centre for Hindu Studies. Initially he called it the Oxford Centre for Vaishnav and Hindu Studies, but then for PR reasons he dropped the Vaishnav, but it's the same thing. And so this was, I don't know, about 12 or 15 years ago now, I suppose. 10 years anyway. I remember he called me up, he said, Rancho, I'd heard that Prabhupada wanted a centre in Oxford. It was something that Prabhupada had said very early on. He wanted to preach to the scholars. And he said that even before he came to England, he encouraged the devotees to go to Oxford and see if you can have a program there. And they did actually. Mukunda went and booked a hall. Or somehow they got invited to a college. There's a lovely photograph appeared in the Back to Godhead magazine, sort of about 1970, 69, of a kirtan on a college lawn in Oxford. Most of the old colleges, they're arranged as a quadrangle around a courtyard on the lawn. So on this lawn, the devotees were dancing. But not just the devotees, they had like 100 of the students, and they were all linked hands, and they were dancing around in a big circle in the courtyard, chanting Hare Krishna. So they had a really good experience there. And consequently, later on when Prabhupada came, they did go up to Oxford in, I think, October 1969, and Prabhupada gave a lecture in Oxford Town Hall. And there were some lovely photographs of that occasion. And one of the photographs, Prabhupada is going like this, leaning forward. His eyes are closed and his finger is up like this. And the photograph captures him in profile. And that photograph, I think even now, still appears on the front cover of the Back to Godhead every issue. It's in a little circle, Prabhupada's doing that, so that's Oxford Town Hall. And it was packed, there were about 200 people, students, and by the looks of the pictures, also quite a few lecturers came. And they had a very ecstatic kirtan. There's other photographs of Prabhupada with his arms like this in the kirtan on the stage, standing up. Yeah. So Shaunaka Rishi, he'd heard, that Prabhupada said we must have a centre in Oxford, but nobody had done it up until 12 or so years ago. And he went there alone without any real encouragement or support initially. He soon got support later. And so he called me up and said, Rancho, could you come up? And can you come with me to meet the Regius Professor of Divinity at Oxford? There's a chair called the Regius Chair, and it's appointed directly by the Queen. The Regius Professor of Divinity is the Queen's theological advisor, and the Queen, of course, is the head of the Church of England. We have this unique religious system here where the monarch is the head of the church, we have an established church, which is coming under a lot of criticism or scrutiny at the moment, because now that we live in a multicultural, a multi-faith society, people are saying, well, is it appropriate that, you know, the established religion of the country should be the Church of England, not just Christianity, but the Church of England? Shouldn't we separate? Like in America, they separate. You know, church and state are kept well apart, but in this country, they're absolutely together. And the politicians, you know, they worship in St Margaret's Church next door to Parliament. That's Parliament's church. And, you know, religion is absolutely woven, actually, through the establishment of this country, but it's the Church of England. Personally, when I've sometimes been asked, you know, am I in favour of the church being established, and I say, well, actually I am, because I'd rather live in a country where the religion is woven into the establishment than where it is, you know, cut asunder. And my own experiences with the Archbishop of Canterbury, there's been a number of archbishops, you know, they're replaced every 4 or 5 years, and I've met a good few of them, and they've all been extremely saintly men, the ones I've met, by any calculation of mine. The current one, what's his name? I forget his name. Rowan Williams. He looks like an old man. He's got a long, you know, grey beard and bald head and grey hair. But he's actually younger than I am. I'm surprised to find. And he's a, you know, very humble man. One time, invited to, I was involved with organising an event at Lambeth Palace, which is the official home of the Archbishop. And we had a couple of hundred guests from around the world, really religious leaders and so on. And we were all guests of the Archbishop. So the event went on, and there were speeches, and there were speeches, and there was food, which was vegetarian, because that's the only way you can cater for all the religions. So we had that. And then people were mingling and talking, and then it was time to go. And I had to stay quite late because I was involved with organising, and finally it was time to leave, and so I wandered off down this long wide corridor, vaguely wondering what had happened to the Archbishop. And halfway down the corridor, he was stood there on his own, and he was waiting as each guest left, you see. So as each person left, he waited until he came, and then very modestly said, "Thank you so much for coming. It was so good to have you. You know, please come again and shake hands." And he did it so modestly. And yet he's the head of the Church of England, which is spread all over the world. It's incredibly prestigious position. So, I'm sort of getting around to Sarvabhauma being the chief theologian, but someone like Rowan Williams, maybe that's how Sarvabhauma was. You know, he was a highly respected person like that. But in the case of Oxford, Shoemaker said, "So can you come with me and let's meet the Regius Professor of Divinity," whose name was Keith Ward. And you know, we met him, and he was a little on his guard, you know, meeting a couple of Krishna devotees. And Shoemaker wanted to ask Keith Ward, "Please, can you help us to start a centre in Oxford?"